So just yesterday, jagex announced their new project, Fresh Start Worlds, and it's been pretty negative so far. Now, I would rank this as like a tier 2 drama, not quite on the level of jagex banning RuneLite HD or some of the other top tier dramas, but this is somewhere in the middle. So what exactly are Fresh Start Worlds? Well, it would be something that would be mainly marketed towards new or returning players, and it would be a chance for them to get a completely fresh start on an entirely separate game mode. Now, I call it a game mode because you'd have to log into a specific Fresh Start world and you would need a brand new account. The idea is these worlds would allow new players to have a completely fresh start with a brand new economy, no other high level players in the game, and it would kind of mirror the original 2013 release of Oldschool. Now, there would be no new content and the game would be as is and almost identical to the main game. Now, the Fresh Start worlds would exist for 6 months, and after that time they'd be migrated to the main game with all of their items and experience. Now, before we dive into why this might be controversial, let's start with what actually are jagex's goals or stated goals with this update. Now, they state that they're looking to attract new players or bring back players who haven't played for a very long time. They say that having a fresh new world is very enticing for new players and that they have done some research that indicates that it might be very attractive to them. They also say that it is a lot easier to market an idea like a Fresh Start server, and in isolation, I think that's for the most part true. It's probably a lot easier to market an idea like this than just be like, hey, Oldschool Runescape's still here, come play it now, versus, joining 10 years ago. It's more of an event, and I think, marketing would be a lot easier for that. And as a whole, I actually don't hate the idea. I think if they're actually just looking to attract new players, it's probably a pretty low effort way to try to do that. I think for many people who are on the fence of playing old school, this could be a great stepping stone into the game, and it will be less overwhelming with all brand new players. Now, that's kind of the idealistic viewpoint of it, because in reality, this is, I don't think, how it's really going to play out. Now, although the Fresh Start worlds are marketed to new players, anyone can play them. So this world will be made up of, well, brand new players and some long-term returning players, of course, but there's also going to be tons of existing players who might be competing for high scores, existing players who are simply playing it to try to make some money and transfer it to the main game, and of course bots. So now let's jump into the main sticking point as to why this is such a controversial idea. And that comes down to the fact that you need a brand new account to play in the game mode. It's not like leagues where you can log on with an existing account and you just get a separate profile. It's an entirely new account, which means if you want to play in membership, you have to pay for it. So a lot of people view this as a cash grab and just a way for jagex to cash in on existing players making a new paid account. Now, I think there could be some truth to this because they are not in any way, shape, or form disincentivizing existing players from playing. And even in their messaging, they are kind of admitting that they expect existing players to compete for high scores and play in the game. So the very cynical viewpoint is the entire point of this is simply to get more money out of existing players, which I personally don't really agree with. In my opinion, I think this is genuinely meant to appeal to new players, but I am sure they're happy to make a bit of existing money off of the existing player base as well. In my opinion, I think if they were legitimately trying to just get more accounts created from existing players, get more ults made, they would take a different approach and find something as low effort, but something that would appeal more to the existing player base. So I don't personally buy into that conspiracy. Another issue that a lot of people are bringing up is the economic impact of having Fresh Start worlds. Now, the way the Fresh Start worlds work is they would exist for 6 months. So you start in these worlds and you progress your account, and after 6 months, everyone's account would be migrated to the main game. So this would dump a ton of accounts into the main game world with a ton of different items as well, which a lot of people assume would crash the prices of those items. And that was the immediate response for a lot of people, but I think if we look at it a little deeper than that, I really don't think there will be much of an economic impact from this update. The reality is that while yes, a lot of accounts could be migrated to the main game all at once, and having all those items potentially dumped into the market at once could, crash things temporarily, but it's not like these are really excess items. Even if we consider that a lot of existing players will participate in Fresh Start worlds, there's an opportunity cost to participate in this. You can't really play multiple accounts efficiently all at once, which means even if an existing player decides to, grind out 6 months in this new world, and sell other items after, it just wouldn't really make sense. They might as well just play the existing game and to take advantage of much easier to obtain resources and food, have better gear, and be able to kill the bosses quicker. And if they're new players, then, well, we just gain some new players, and sure, they will dump items into the market, but they'll also add more demand for things as well, making it kind of just a net neutral in my eyes. I really don't see there being much of an economic impact. Not to mention, I just don't think their player counts for these worlds are going to even be that high to begin with. And finally, players are able to migrate their account at any time, which means throughout the 6 months, people will slowly trickle into the main game and not necessarily all at the end. So although it's clear I'm not quite as negative as a lot of people on this idea, I don't necessarily think it's going to be that successful either. So let's just put aside all of the drama surrounding this. As an idea on its own, how successful is this most likely going to be? If you are a new player and you join one of these worlds, what is your experience going to be like? The realistic experience is things are going to be a lot more scarce. It's going to be harder to buy essential items on the Grand Exchange, that random quest item you need, you're going to have to go get it. Unless these worlds end up being much more popular than I anticipate, there'll be a lot of volatility in item prices. Sometimes even some very common items like lobsters or rune items, you might just not be able to buy or sell on the Grand Exchange because the player count is too low. And that's not even considering higher or mid-level items that might take months to enter the economy. For example, a stock standard item like an Abyssal Whip, well, you need 85 Slayer to get that, and that could take a fair while on a server made up of, well, primarily new players. Now that's not necessarily an issue, but Fresh Start Worlds are definitely going to be a different experience to if you just made a main account in the main game mode. The Fresh Start Worlds are going to be more difficult, with scarcer items, and not a lot of help. So Fresh Start Worlds is an idea I'm intrigued by, but I'm not really certain how successful it's going to be. I think the most likely outcome is, well, the Fresh Start Worlds come out, they do a bunch of marketing for it, some new players, but probably mostly returning players who haven't played in, some amount of years, come and play the game. But overall, the player counts won't be that high. I think there is a critical mass of players that is required to have a server work at all. I think if the player counts on the server falls too low, it'll just kind of become a glorified group Iron Man account, but with also the Grand Exchange. If there's only a couple hundred active players, then it's just not going to work very well. But either way, I think game modes are going to be a very prevalent thing that we're going to see in the future. I mean, it's already been the case for a while now with huge focuses on game modes such as Group Ironman, Dead Man Mode, Leagues. I mean, it's really appealing for jagex as a company to work on these because they can't really introduce microtransactions, so game modes is kind of the next best thing. So I think whether we like it or not, and whether it's Fresh Start Worlds or something else, game modes in general are here to stay. Now, before I go here, I want to give a giant thank you to all of my members over on YouTube. Thank you so much to March3258 and Pewter, who just joined the Dragon tier, joining the Hybrid, Alejandra, and Kush Patel. Thank you guys so much, really appreciate it. Also thank you to YoYoSub89, Carter, Mexos, and NDM001 for subscribing at the Runite tier. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.